Well, hello YouTube, it's me Fortmaster, and welcome back to another Dead Sound reaction. And this one's going to be a little special. Given my last Dead Sound reaction, which was Rise of the Decayed, which is the last, for now, part of Dead Sound's Sauria series, a lot of people were telling me to actually go ahead and do reactions to the making of and the lore videos that followed. So in this reaction, I'm actually going to be watching 3 videos, making of Rise of the Decayed, and both of the Sauria lore compendiums, The Fell and Blue Song Empire. I'm not going to be doing a reaction to any of the ones before this because I've already watched them, so I don't know how long this video itself is going to be, so just in case, as always, if the video does end up being over an hour long by a significant margin, it will be cut into 2 smaller pieces. At this point, I have no idea. But yeah, we should probably get this thing started then. So, of course, as always, original video is linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video will lead to my Let's Play of the day. And yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
Hello, my name is David, and today I'll be covering how I created Rise of the Decayed, the 3rd film in my Sauria animated series. I'll be covering everything, like how I go from these early drawings to my fully finished characters. I'll be going over all of my artwork, my animation work, my inspirations, and even some of the backstory and lore I have written out to complement the larger world of Sauria. Please enjoy.
The music in these is so good.
I love horror.
Oh really? I couldn't tell.
Horror films, the history of horror cinema, horror games, horror stories, and while I feel horror elements show up a lot in my artwork and animations, rarely do I get the chance to create a straight-up horror film. But with Rise of the Decayed, that's exactly what I set out to do. Many different things inspired me to create this film, but I think the works of H.P. Lovecraft definitely
that's exactly what I thought.
Influence.
I mean, you could see them. You could see like the Cthulhu inspiration in that last. I don't know what it's even called, like that creature that came up from like the well, because like that very. Like, I don't know how that like lean gorilla, I guess you could call it, like that body plan where it's bipedal by nature, but still very much walks on all 4s and that sort of deal. Like that's very much like whenever you see a depiction of like I don't know, like Cthulhu, like whenever it like a full body, they're almost always like that.
H.P. Lovecraft, for those of you who don't know, was an American author who created the Cthulhu mythos. Lovecraftian horror, the subgenre he coined, is often referred to as the horror of the unknown, or cosmic horror.
Yeah, he was also extremely racist, but he was racist in an English way, so it wasn't just skin color, it was also just anybody that was lower class than you and was not, good proper breeding, that sort of deal. And yeah, also a rather unfortunately named cat.
His stories often featured ancient and unseen cosmic gods, monsters, and forbidden knowledge, forbidden truths that once known changed the characters' minds, their perceptions of their reality, driving them to total madness. His stories often feature a single narrating protagonist, recounting the events of the story to the reader as if writing a journal or a letter. This single exposition-spouting monologuing character would, over the course of the story, be driven to insanity as things get darker and more twisted.
I know of the gods they call upon now.
That's...
I never noticed that in the short. Yeah, it does. It does follow that same sort of theming and story structure. Huh. Huh, okay.
That's why Rise of the Decayed is written the way it is, with Ornithocera being pretty much the only speaking character, monologuing directly to a silent audience as he is slowly possessed.
This is its game. And after what I have seen, I am truly sorry.
Yeah, the great old
Approximately
ones.
5,000 years ago, the forefathers all mysteriously disappeared. They were a once great and powerful empire, an intellectual race of scientists and scholars. They once managed to conquer the whole of Sauria. And now, in the absolute darkest corners of the world, a sickness is festering. Some call them the Dark Ones, others the Decayed, but most call them the Fell. Creatures that skulk in the night. They kidnap unsuspecting travelers, slaughter livestock, the stuff of scary fairy tale. But these twisted and feral things almost never seen are not myth. In fact, these fell things are somehow the last surviving echoes of the mighty forefathers.
Oh, they are. Oh. See, I remember in the lore, in like making of videos for the last one, Winter Weather, that's it. He was talking about how that the temple, were the, I forget what his name is now. You know, the main character of Winter Weathered, where he went into, and that was one of these forefathers, like ancient temples, and like the whole idea of where Blue Song, the empire, is looking for his kind because there's rumors that there's one of them who is so ancient that they actually have a living memory of the forefathers. So the fact that some of them are still around, but there's like these corrupted creatures. Oh yeah, that's creepy.
That was the small snippet of lore I wrote out for the Fell before I started to sketch out my designs. I immediately knew I wanted the Fell and the forefathers to look like pterosaurs. Sauria is just as much inspired by modern paleoart as it is vintage paleoart.
Oh yeah, those
I chose
ones.
pterosaurs specifically because the group has had such a dramatic change in public and scientific perception over the decades that I felt fit the contrast between the forefathers and the Fell really, really well. Modern pterosaur paleoart depicts these animals as noble and strong and competent masters of their domain, just like the forefathers, while in the past, pterosaurs were depicted as squawking, monstrous and leathery vermin, just like the Fell.
Okay.
It really didn't take me very long to settle on the type of look I wanted for these monsters, and in fact, once I got to this drawing here, I felt more than comfortable 3D modelling and texturing the character models.
Huh. That's... I really like that. That's a cool way of like showing character, of like, I don't know what you call like a character design, where when they're in their prime, they're, you know, regal, very proper, very natural, but then as they've been like, I guess for lack of a better term, been like corrupted, because as somebody said in a comment, these are not actual zombies. They've just become like not right. Like they don't act how they're supposed to and things.
I love these guys. I've always loved like the creepy, hunched and feral monster type characters, and honestly, I think getting the chance to design monsters like these, bringing them to life, getting them to move and to scream and to skulk is probably the most fun I have making these animated short films. As for all of the fell-possessed animals we see in the film, there's a crocodile, a stegosaurus, and some Litzowichia, but I think the star really is the Spinosaurus. I came up with this idea while working on Rise of the Decade, that this Spinosaurus was a serious challenge for these fell cultists to subdue and curse. The scars and spears and restraints littering the animal's hide hint to this. They paint a picture of just how much of a struggle it was for the fell to battle and restrain such a powerful, wild animal.
Okay. See, I didn't even, fully register. That's... I didn't even notice these. These are, spears that were thrown at, and they're still embedded in, the dinosaur itself. I don't really know what I thought these were. I mean, obviously they're scars, but, I didn't think it was, from... the fell fighting the Spinosaurus. I mean, again, this is my thoughts from when I was watching the short originally, where I thought these were all, reanimated zombies. So, that's why I didn't really register that it would have been tough to take down. But no, these are still living, breathing animals. They're just being mind controlled. And again, that whole, blinking eye paint curse, so freaky. I know it's very simplistic just design wise, but it works in the way it's almost tribal, sort of a cult as well. It hits that kind of that sweet spot, and the fact that it moves is just, again, freaky.
Animal, we should never have taken this path.
Surprise!
The film also has a bunch of returning Sauria dinosaurs as well, like the Parasaurolophus and the Therizinosaurus, but the Stegosaurus, the Allosaurus, and the blink and you'll miss it Nemicolopterus featured in the film were actually not made for Sauria. They were all instead models I made for scrapped Dinosauria series films years ago.
Oh, so
I actually have...
They're so derpy and adorable. I love them.
Tons of fully rigged and textured dinosaur models for films I never made that often never see the light of day, so it was really nice to finally show these three off to you guys in some way. Speaking of character models created for other films, I need to talk about these Pachycephalosaurus looking dudes. I actually added this short scene last minute into Rise of the Decade, but this race of oppressed peasant farmers living under Blue Song rule were originally going to be the stars of the fourth film in the Sauria series. The fourth film was going to centre around a particularly young individual, as he finds his grandfather's old armour and discovers his family were once noble knights, and his people were not always living under the shadow of an uncaring empire. They were once proud, independent, and strong.
Oh, okay.
I won't spoil too much because I think I might still make this film, possibly, but more on that later.
Okay.
The Fel are dangerous but killable feral monsters. The great elder ones they worship are unkillable eldritch gods. The transcended ones are somewhere in between.
Oh, wait a second.
Walking in, a definitive design for an unknowable Lovecraftian entity almost defeats the purpose. These things are supposed to be formless and unimaginable. So the big bads, the great elder ones, we don't ever see. What we do see in the film is a transcended one. These things are not quite gods themselves. They were, in fact, once mortal saurians that were so deeply corrupted by magic that they have transcended into Lovecraftian demigods.
Oh, okay. So so that thing wasn't one of the gods. It's like, for lack of a better term, a demigod. Okay.
My first real design attempts just looked like animals. They looked like dinosaurs, which really wasn't what I wanted for this character.
Wait, actually, well, doesn't that one, oh god, what, is it just me, or does that almost look like that, I'm forgetting its name. What was the fake dinosaur they made up for the first, Jurassic World movie? The one that had, like, it was, like, giant, had raptor DNA. Yeah, that was it. The Indominus Rex. Is that just me? Or does this one specifically right here kind of look like the Indominus Rex? Because, again, again, for me, it's mostly the forearms, because if I remember correctly, it did have raptor DNA, so it had much more developed forelimbs than, say, like a T-Rex or something like that. Like, I'm not going nuts here, am I?
Character. So I pivoted into a more dark fantasy direction.
I mean, that's a good choice for your dark fantasy series. I mean, it'd be very odd if you made a dark fantasy series and pivoted towards cyberpunk. Oh geez, how would that work? Can you imagine, like, you have a dark fantasy series, but then it's revealed that, like, the ancient precursor civilization is, like, a fallen, like, it was basically a fallen cyberpunk, like, civilization, like, and, like, all the magic is basically, like, haywire, like, nanotech or something like that, that's just kind of been spread throughout the world. Oh, geez, okay, that'd be kind of cool.
These sketches, more ogre and demon-like, were getting closer, but it wasn't until I sketched this up
heads
where I felt like I was really starting to get somewhere. These final designs I really do love, and it was through this creative process where I decided that each individual transcended one should look very different from the next. These were once mortal Saurians transformed into eldritch servants, and I thought it would be really cool if they could retain some of their mortal...
Okay, so I get now that, you know, they're not zombies brought back to life, but you can't fault me for thinking that there was some sort of zombie or something thing going on here from looking at this thing. Because, I mean, like, look, it has, like, vast things of exposed muscle, it has holes literally everywhere through its, like, body and musculature and stuff like that. The thing looks like it's missing pieces.
Physical attributes. So I imagine that this particular individual that you see in the film, when they were mortal, were probably a ceratopsian-looking Saurian. I went through a very similar creative process designing my own version of Cthulhu a few years ago, and what I ended up with was
I remember seeing those in other ones.
heavy-set behemoth. He stood tall and looked ancient and wise. I think what I love so much about my Transcended One design in comparison is that this character doesn't stand tall or look ancient or wise.
Well, ancient, yes, but ancient, again, as in a more decomposing sort of way.
This guy's hunched with a big head and a small body and a long, skinny, rat-like tail. It instead looks
sort of
more
rat-like,
like an
yeah.
enormous, mischievous and sadistic imp. And that's because the Transcended Ones are supposed to be the servants of the Great Elder Ones. Demigods, not gods themselves. If you would like to know more about the lore behind all of this stuff, the Fel, the Transcended Ones, the Forefathers, Sauria as a whole, make sure to check out my Sauria lore compendium videos as well.
Don't worry, I will be.
I created this film and the whole Sauria series using a mix of 3D and 2D animation. All of the characters and props and even some of the sets are 3D models, animated in 3D with Blender. But all of the backdrops, the environments, are 2D elements drawn in Photoshop.
And that's part of the reason I like his stuff so much, is that you look at it, and of course you can tell, like, it's parts of it are 3D animated, but with the flat coloring and lighting and stuff like that, mixed with like the flat, like, 2D backgrounds, it almost looks like a really well animated 2D drawing almost. And it just has a feeling that, like, you know, not many other things have. I don't think I've seen very many at all, or any, if that, like animated shorts on YouTube or anything like that, where it has a similar style like this, and it helps stick it out so well.
And then finally, like in shots like these, any extra details like the blood splatter are animated on top of the shots using more traditional frame-by-frame 2D animation.
Okay, well, yeah, I think you don't have to deal with, like, liquid, like, fluid simulations or anything like that. Can I just say, this one drop right here, like, that, can I just say, like, overacting much? But, like, it just goes like, whoop-boo!
For this film in particular, I actually got to 3D model a few more things than just the characters. The cage that the Blue Song sit in is a 3D prop, as was a lot of the ritual sacrifice set. I also tried something new and created a collection of tree presets for this film. I essentially just drew like 10 or 12 different high quality swampy trees that I could easily drag and drop into the backdrops of each shot where I needed. I usually don't do this, and instead I tend to draw every single branch and every single tree and every single bush from scratch.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Very time consuming.
Yeah.
This preset technique is very useful, and it saved a lot of time, but I don't think I'm going to do this again. I don't like cutting corners like this. I'm very meticulous, and this felt lazy.
I mean, I can totally get that sort of feeling, but at the same time, I mean, like, I did not notice that, you know, the trees were, you know, duplicating and stuff like that, especially ones that are just, like, so far in the background that, like, they're there just to add, like, some complexity to the background. Like, they're not the focal point or anything. And at the same time, I would think it actually kind of works sort of more in, like, a swampy environment. Because, I mean, like, of course you have, you know, in any kind of forest or anything, you always have, like, low-lying shrubs and plants and all that sort of stuff. When it comes to trees, specifically, in, like, swamps, in everything I've seen, at the very least, they're usually a lot more spaced out. So, and, I mean, when it comes to, like, swamps, you usually get, like, a lot fewer variety of individual plants, because, you know, there aren't as many plants that are evolved to, like, exist in, like, swamps and the harsh environments that come with them, as opposed to, you know, other places. I think it was Dan Povenmire, one of the creators of Phineas and Ferb, and he said that, like episodes or whatever, movies or whatever, they're never actually finished, they're just abandoned. And it gets to the whole point of where, like, you're putting in so much effort for diminishing results. Now, am I saying that if he had, you know, done like normal and like designed every tree and every bush in the short to be, you know, individualistic and special and stuff like that, would it have made the film look better? Possibly, probably even. But at the same time, as I said, I didn't notice the fact that the trees were repeating. So yes, individually creating the trees may have, you know, made it look better in the long run, but it may have been only by like a couple of percentage points. And at the end of the day, you have to worry about, like, wasting your time making, like, perfecting every little detail that 95% of people are never going to notice in the first place.
I'm sure no one else noticed this, but I personally, when I watch the film, can tell that the same 12 trees are being reused over and over again.
Well, I mean, considering you made them.
Ivan Dutch again created the soundtrack for this film, as he has done for all of Sauria, and his work, as usual, was outstanding. I don't know what else to say, other than just please go check out his work, his YouTube, his Patreon, his whatever else. It'll all be linked down below. Ivan's score has elevated the series just so much.
No, it really did. It was
amazing.
truly good, like, music. Evaluation.
I think this film is awesome. What it does for Sauria's world building is particularly great, and I'm not even talking about the exposition-heavy forefather fell dialogue. I'm talking about seeing the oppressed farmers, the ancient ruins, and seeing how all of the factions of Sauria are affecting the wildlife of the land. Even though this film is so heavily influenced by the works of H.P. Lovecraft, to me it still feels incredibly unique.
Well, that's the thing, like, granted, I don't have the widest experience with, like, dark fantasy or stuff, anything of that nature. The only experience I really have with it is like Conan, and even then, it's mostly just, watching lore videos and seeing the movie from, like, I think it was like from the 80s that had Arnold Schwarzenegger in it. But it's that feeling where, like, it's primitive, everything's rough. It's that feeling that, like, again, dark fantasy or low fantasy, however you want to call it, it just has a feeling that you don't get much in many other sort of settings, I guess you could say. And also, speaking of Conan the Barbarian, I think, if I remember correctly, I can't remember where I heard this from, but, like, the Conan setting actually splits off into 3 different universes. So you have the one, which is where, like, Conan the Barbarian is in the ancient past, like, ancient past, and it just goes up to our modern day. Then you have the other one where I think Conan also is, like, the very early precursor to, like, the Marvel comic book universe, because I think in, like, the 80s or 90s, like, Marvel made, like, Conan comic books, and at the time Marvel had basically had a thing in place where basically every comic book they printed was canon to the universe at some point in time. And then the third one is where Conan the Barbarian is the early precursors to Lovecraft's world and his work. So, I mean, again, it's dark fantasy. It all leads into one another.
This Lovecraftian dinosaur horror story, this weird, dark, stone punk fantasy thing I've made,
Stone punk?
doesn't really remind me of anything else. It feels very fresh and very new.
I haven't heard that before, but I like it.
This one finds our little lives ever so fascinating.
But I do have issues with Rise of the Decayed. I think it's probably the most flawed of the Sauria trilogy.
Really?
The monologue-heavy, H.P. Lovecraft-inspired structure I don't think translated as well as I'd like. It just comes across as a bit, I don't know, muddy, confusing. I think the twist
I can see that, yeah.
Thessera has been possessed since the attack and has been part of the Transcended One's game isn't as interesting as it ought to be. And I also provided the voices for all of the speaking characters again, not just in this film, but across the whole Sauria series. I don't think my voice acting is bad at all. In Sauria, I think it's pretty great. It's just that all of the characters kinda sound the same. Nah, my biggest issue with this film is that it's the finale and it ends on a straight-up cliffhanger. Which brings...
Yeah, that was something... Wait, did I talk about that in my reaction to Rise of the Decayed? Because I remember actually talking about whether, like, I was confused whether this was going to be the last one or not, because again, it ended so abruptly.
Brings me on to the final segment.
Future of Sauria.
This Sauria animated series started off as just one film. Blood for Blood. A simple idea that I had. It was just going to be a fun standalone sword and sorcery dinosaur barbarian film. While I was making the film, however, I couldn't help myself. I couldn't help but flesh out the world, the lore, everything around this conflict. I eventually ended up writing 6 different Sauria stories in total. Not 3, 6. I decided to focus on just the first 3 films after realising just how insane the workload was going to be for the whole 6-part series.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
The first 3 stories still painted a really rich picture of this savage primordial world I was creating, focusing on Sauria's 3 main thematic pillars: war, wildlife, and witchcraft. After the first half was complete, I planned to look back and see if people liked it, see how well it did, and see how much I enjoyed making it, and would decide if I wanted to continue the series from there.
Okay.
And here I am. The first half is complete and I'm looking back. I love this world, and I really, really like the 3 sequel films I have written down. The main thing putting me off continuing work on Sauria is, as you can probably tell, the insane amount of work it is.
Yeah,
If
I'd
you've
imagine.
been watching these behind the scenes videos, I think you get a glimpse of just how much goes into everything here. When I started work on this project, I genuinely thought these 3 films would take less than a year to make. But it has taken me closer to 3 years. I think just over 2.5 years. To put that into perspective, it took 2.5 years to make 3 Sauria films. It only took me 1.5 years to make my whole Dinosauria series, which was 5 films. And I haven't been working less, I've been working a lot more. So,
Jeez, okay.
right now,
I mean,
if
you can
I'm
certainly see the
completely honest with you
quality.
guys, I'm imagining working for another, 2.5 years, 3 years, 5 or 6 years in total on the remaining 3 films in the Sauria series, and I just don't want to do that.
Yeah, I can definitely see that,
Sauria
yeah.
may continue. Like I said, I do have fun making these, and I like this world, and I don't like the way it's left off. But if it does return, it won't be for a while. No, I'm in the mood to work on something a lot simpler right now.
Terrible Lizards, Dinosauria Volume 2? Baby T-Rexes!
If you want to support me or show your support for this series, please check out my Patreon page. For just $5, you will gain access to high-resolution photographs of the whole sketchbook I've been showing off in this video. The entire Sauria sketchbook from start to finish is finally up and available for you guys to read. The whole thing. By supporting me on Patreon, you'll also get to read any and all updates on my upcoming Dinosauria animated series Volume 2 as well.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna like seeing that.
Thank you all.
Okay, well, that was making of Rise of the Decayed. So, I mean, the fact that he's going back to make a second series for Dinosauria, I mean, definitely going to be looking forward to that. And the fact that you actually see baby T-Rexes just after I was talking about them in Winter Weathered, about like the, what was it, the theory that some people had about like the family structure and how like the babies helped the parents hunt and stuff like that. I mean, if you want to see more, I mean, watch the video. But that is so adorable. They're even covered in feathers. Ah! Oh, it's absolutely adorable. Ah! Okay, so the second video of the session. The Fell Sauria Lore Compendium. So this is actually going into the lore of the Fell rather than just, you know, the making of the video itself. So let's get this thing started then.
Hello, my name is David. Sauria is a brutal, primordial, dark fantasy world.
Yes.
It's full of dangerous wildlife, cultists, bandits, and numerous warring factions. this video, I'll be going over the backstory and lore behind the Fel. Often the subject of fairy tale and folklore, these terrifying and evil creatures are in fact the twisted remnants of a once mighty dynasty.
Again, love the music.
The forefathers.
I mean, my stupid brain for a second, or I thought that said four feathers.
Others were once a grand civilization, a supremely intelligent race of scholars and scientists. At their height, they managed to conquer the whole of Sauria. But something happened, and 5,000 years ago, the forefathers all mysteriously disappeared, leaving nothing but the ruins of their grand cities, their statues, and their libraries behind. It isn't known, it isn't remembered whether the forefathers were benevolent peacekeepers or tyrannical rulers. They rose to power at a time when almost all other Saurian cultures were in their infancy. Only the most impossibly ancient of the Arctic Saurians may have further knowledge on these mysterious people. It is believed that through their heedless search for knowledge, the forefathers began to experiment and study the art of sorcery. Magic is an inherently evil and corrupting force in the land of Sauria.
Oh,
but the forefathers
okay.
had conquered everything. They wanted to know everything, and through this deep, dark search for answers, for power, they managed to attract the attention of forces far beyond the usual comprehension of mortal beings.
Okay. So that's one way of doing it. I mean, I've seen like how like in like various settings where they have magic, it's like they'll have some where it's like, oh, it's like a natural force, and if you overuse it, you're essentially polluting or you're corrupting like the life essence, or you know, or like mana or whatever it is. It's just, you know, the life essence of all living things. But saying that magic is an inherently evil force. Okay, that's interesting. Okay. I mean, I guess that also does add more credence to the whole dark fantasy sort of deal, because most often dark fantasy settings are usually low magic settings at the same time. So that does make sense, the whole thing that like, why do people not go into magic? Well, it'll kill you if you do.
This is what led to their sudden extinction. For centuries, the Fel were believed to be nothing more than myths. They were the subject of folklore, often portrayed as skulking, sickened things that steal livestock at night, kidnap travelers, and perform perverse sacrificial rituals based on the phases of Sauria's dual moons.
Oh yeah, it does have two moons. I never noticed that in the previous short. Okay.
The Fel usually live in small groups, eking out livings in the absolute darkest corners of the world. But their numbers have been rising lately. More and more are awakening, and their physical resemblance to the grand statues of that ancient and revered civilization cannot be ignored. Whatever truly happened to the forefathers, the Fel are all that's left of them. The Fel are feral husks, witches and cultists worshipping abhorrent cosmic gods. Unlike other Saurians, they cannot speak and cannot be reasoned with. They are truly unnatural things, so deeply corrupted by dark magical forces that they poison the very flora and fauna around their nests. With enough time, all living things around them will wilt and sicken.
Okay, so again, going into the whole thing of, magic being inherently evil. It's not a life-creating thing. It's it inherently destroys. I guess going to the whole thing where magic is connected to the great old ones in some way, and they're not meant to be on this plane. Huh. Okay. Really interesting. Again, just going into the whole thing where I guess just, it kind of goes to the whole sort of like base normalness of magic and fantasy. But like magic is usually shown to be just to be like you harnessing like the powers of nature. But no, this is inherently like destroying it to the point where like the ones who use it wouldn't even consider people anymore.
Fell covens are often led by one or more immensely powerful and magically corrupted fell priests. These tortured souls sew their eyes shut and bind their mouths closed.
Wait a second, I just noticed another thing. Oh my god, look at that. You can even see the corruption, because like he, she, they, whatever, they've sewed their eyes shut in their mouth, but they've grown other eyes on their chest and torso. Oh god, that is creepy.
Tortured souls sew their eyes shut and bind their mouths closed. This self-inflicted mutilation may be to help elevate their other senses, their magical abilities, but could also just simply be a side effect of the madness one succumbs to after learning so much. Perhaps this twisted creature sews its eyes shut to stop itself from seeing the impossible and terrifying things it cannot unsee.
Oh, that's sad.
But perhaps its mouth is bound to stop itself from constantly screaming. The Fel are very gifted in the art of sorcery and take advantage of a lot of spells, curses, and magical rituals. They are perhaps most infamous for the Fel-seeing curse, a dark magical brand, a mark that corrupts the mind and zombifies the victim.
Okay, yeah, so they are zombies, but again, more in a Haitian voodoo zombie sort of way, where it's more mind control rather than, a shambling corpse.
Under this curse's influence, the victim will bend to the will of the Fel. They mostly use this curse on animals. Animals they can use as tools, use as weapons, and use as spies.
Yeah.
Generally,
so
the darker
creepy.
and more powerful the spell, the more life essence is required to cast it. This essence can come from the caster, but that is very dangerous. No, one is far better off receiving this essence from the possession and slaughter of wild animals.
Yeah, of course.
But far more of this precious magical resource is acquired through the slaughter of intelligent saurians.
Magic in
The land of
Sauria.
Sauria
Okay.
is very sick. Perverse energies leak out of the world's very core, and it is these energies that form the foundation of any given Saurian's magical abilities.
Reverse?
The more one studies this dangerous science, the more powerful they may become, but this power comes with a sickness of the mind and the flesh. Magic's energies come directly from the great Elder Ones, cosmic beings, gods, things that the Fel worship. Despite this inherent danger, most Saurian races practice magic to some extent, but usually in such small quantities it's mostly harmless.
Okay.
The Kindred of the Tusk war chieftain Torox, for example, is infamous for wielding an enchanted mace that is blessed with the power of lightning.
Right, I forgot about that. It's been a while since I watched the first one.
Overcome a certain amount of magic's corrupting properties with a strong sense of will. But magic is generally considered a very dangerous thing to study in Sauria. Many factions have old and untraceable and foreboding folktales of how dangerous this art can be. Repeatedly, these stories say that the study will lead the individual to madness and their homelands to plague.
You know, given like the bit of research and stories I've heard about like archaeology and how like stories and beliefs travel, I can't help but I would not be surprised in the slightest if every single one of those stories all traced their way back to how like the forefathers fell, and it was just stories being passed on from generation to generation from the most ancient like barely sentient tribes that were passed on to the, like a better term, modern day. Like as an example of that, oh god, I'm completely forgetting what the name was. There was this tribe, I can't remember what it was. If anybody in the comments knows, feel free to correct me here. But there was this, I think it was like an African tribe or something, where they have stories of like, a pair of goddesses, sisters, or whatever, that were in the sky. But then they had to split, and one of them left and hasn't come back. But the stars that they actually talk about in those legends is actually like a pair of stars that have gotten, where their perspective of them has gotten closer as time has gone on. And these stories trace all the way back in time to a point in history, or like prehistory, when those two stars were two like individual stars before they moved close enough in the sky where you couldn't distinguish them from one another anymore. So it looked like one of them disappeared. Like, oh god, this is gonna be one of those things that I'm going to remember in like 3 days, like out of nowhere. It's gonna kill me. Hi, yes, it's Future Editing Fortmaster here, and I have finally figured out what I was in fact talking about before. And thank you to r/tip of my tongue and one Imaginary Events, as noted by the scholar Stith Thompson. The constellation, who's actually named the Seven Sisters, was nearly always imagined as a group of 7 sisters, even though nowadays you can only really see 6 stars. And their myths explained why there were only 6. Some scientists suggest that these may come from observations back when Pleione was further apart from Atlas and more visible as a separate star as far back as 100,000 BC. I've heard it said before that like 99% of all of human history is just lost to the sands of time. But it is absolutely amazing that you have just like a little tiny nugget like that, like somehow surviving to the modern day for possibly over 100,000 years. It's nuts.
And famine. A handful of Saurian factions even totally abstain from using the art. The Arctic Saurians, for example, do not practice magic at all, but this is more so because of their dedication to the great Maya, mother of Sauria. The great Maya is Sauria's benevolent nature goddess, and her spiritual energies are very real and very separate from magic. Though she will not immediately grant the user great and dangerous power, her ethereal energies are...
Again, I can't get over the whole, the mating dance, pairing dance of those 2 T-Rexes were doing. I absolutely loved it. That was just beautiful.
Essential to the health of the realm, and to many, she is seen as the arch enemy of the dark corrupting forces of sorcery. It is worth knowing that the Arctic Saurians are just as old as the forefathers, and though on the brink of extinction, they are still alive. Perhaps it is their dedication to the Great Maya and not the Great Elder Ones that has kept them safe. Another faction that abstains from using magic are the Avisaurians, the Blue Song Empire. This is because the Blue Song are trying to succeed where the forefathers failed. And whatever caused the downfall of this once almighty civilization was clearly tied to the study of sorcery, and therefore the art has been outlawed, forbidden, across the entire empire.
I mean, makes sense. If you want to get further than other people, make sure you don't do what killed them. Yes, the transcended ones.
The transcended are incredibly powerful and immensely evil things, but they were once mortal Saurians. Saurians so deeply engrossed in the art of sorcery, so deeply corrupted by its evil forces, they managed to garner the attention of the great Elder Ones themselves. These beings have been blessed. They've been transformed, transcended into eldritch demigods. Once simple, mortal people twisted into powerful and terrifying and very evil servants of the great Elder Ones. It's important to know that from the perspective of the mortal people of Sauria, the great Elder Ones, the actual cosmic gods, are not immediately dangerous. They are all-powerful, they are unkillable, they are the source of all evil in Sauria. They could perhaps destroy the entire realm on a whim, but they're mostly indifferent to Sauria's existence. They are not interested in the individual and insignificant goings-on of the mortal realm.
I mean, that's just sort of like us. I mean, do you care what an ant is doing on a day-to-day basis? No. The only time you care about what an ant is doing is when it comes into your house and starts stealing your food. I mean, the same kind of goes with every bug. I mean, like, you know those, like, fuzzy-looking house centipedes? I forget what their actual name is, but, like, from everything I've read and heard, you should leave those ones alone. Purely because, you know, they're predators. They eat other insects. They eat, like, the corpses of their own fellow. They'll eat basically anything, really. But, like, I know I've killed a couple of them on the sole assumption that, hey, you know, the deal that we have is that you can live in the house as long as I don't see you.
The transcended ones, however, are very, very interested.
So they're the ones causing all the trouble then.
Because the transcended ones were once mortal, they have a deep interest in this world. They've walked this ground, they've met its people, they likely have enemies. And because the transcended ones were once mortal, they can be sadistic. They can play games. Unlike the great Elder Ones, who have no real concept of time or life or death, the transcended know these things all too well. And with the power they wield, and their minions, the Fel, rising in number, the transcended ones are easily becoming the biggest threat to ever face the land of Sauria. The Great Elder Ones are unknowable eldritch cosmic beings. They are the source of all
the less learned about the Great Old Ones, the better. Very wise words, very.
Magic in Sauria, and are generally considered a very
I don't know what's happening.
The less learned of the great Elder Ones
Okay.
And that's it. That's pretty much all I have written down about the Fel, about the transcended ones, about the Great Elder ones so far. If you'd
more
like to
lore
read the full
more lore to
sketchbook I've
come.
been
Yeah.
showing off in this video and scour my notes for yourself for anything that I might have missed, the whole sketchbook from start to finish is available right now on my Patreon page for just $5.
I mean, I just gotta say, I mean, I wish I had the spare money, like to join him on like Patreon or support him on Patreon. I mean, but like just the way he makes these and the way he makes them look is just it is a close second for the best part of his animated shorts. It's like it's animated short and it's the book he makes about them afterwards. Okay, and here we are, last one of the day, the Blue Song Empire Lore Compendium. Okay, so we're gonna learn more about the dinosaur elves going on here. Well, I know they're not actual dinosaur elves, but like they take that sort of place about. And again, the whole idea that the gods themselves. I mean, yeah, they're evil and dangerous, but they're not the ones you actually want to worry about. It's their servants that are the ones you want to worry about because they're the ones that actually care about what's going on down here, and they're the ones that can mess things up. I love that concept. It's absolutely great.
Hello,
Hi.
my name is David. Sauria is a brutal, primordial, dark fantasy world. It's full of dangerous wildlife, cultists, bandits, and numerous warring factions. In this video, I'll be going over the backstory and lore behind the Blue Song, perhaps the most powerful faction in this otherwise primeval world. They are a highly advanced empire on a relentless crusade to control and tame the wild lands.
I mean, I guess like in comparison to everyone else, yeah, highly advanced. I mean, or is it more like, I'm trying to just guess, but judging by the fact that like all of their blades have that same brownish, bright color, I would say that they're in like the equivalent of like a Bronze Age, I would think.
Of Sauria. The Blue Song Empire is ruled by the Saurians. They originated here, in the Pluvian rainforest, which is located in the Western Isles of Sauria. These rainforest Saurians are ancestrally a arboreal race, living in the trees, leaping from branch to branch, eating fruit, seeds, nuts, and small animals. They're
Okay, so instead of elves, they're much closer to monkeys.
Dromaeosaur-like sickle claws are used more so for climbing than killing. And they needed to climb, too, as some of Sauria's largest and most dangerous predators used to stalk this forest floor.
Used to? Okay, yeah, I can definitely see where this is going. I see they pulled the humanity and hunted all their megafauna to extinction. As you do.
Though this race has since outgrown this primitive monkey-like lifestyle, they maintain a natural swiftness. The Avisaurians may be physically weaker than most other Saurian races, but they have fast reflexes, exceptional eyesight, and impeccable balance to make up for that. All rainforest Saurians grow antlers. Ancestrally, these cumbersome antlers were actually quite a hindrance, living in the trees, getting tangled in the vines and the branches of the rainforest. The antlers evolved purely for sexual display, and back when this race was more primitive, most would shave their antlers down for ease of traversal. But those who did not, those who let their antlers grow, those who displayed their antlers proudly, were in fact displaying their mastery among the trees. The larger the antlers, the more attractive, the more fit, and the more skilled the individual.
I mean, it makes sense. At least, evolutionary speaking. I mean, it's the same thing with, like, fiddler crabs and, peacocks. I mean, with fiddler crabs specifically, I mean, that one big claw that they have is there just to attract females, and it's a hindrance because that big crab is basically useless when it comes when it comes to like eating. So when when they feed, like when the tide is out, they're only able to eat half as quickly as like the females are. And also, you have this giant thing that say like a bird could swoop down and grab rather easily because it's a big hindrance. And then the same with peacocks. If you're able to have the biggest, most colorful tail while actually able to survive while like lugging that thing around, you gotta be doing something right.
This primitive mindset of honest vanity, of pride, of honest shame became deep-seated into the culture of this race, and as their civilization grew and the Avisaurians left the treetops, their antlers remained a status symbol.
I like that. Honest vanity and honest shame. I really like that descriptor. I love that. Though what's with the masks, though? Thinking about it, it's kind of weird.
It is customary for lower-ranking common members of the Blue Song Empire to shave their antlers down, while higher-ranking or higher-class individuals can grow them out. This is pushed to the extreme with the Blue Song monarchy, who don't shave their antlers down at all, which leads to headgear of vast and impressive proportions.
They must have they must just have astronomically strong neck muscles. Wait, I just realized now, I would suppose like the king or whatever monarch that is, they have glowing eyes in the same manner that like the people possessed by the Fel do. Oh god, there's something going on here.
The secret to the success of the Blue Song is a mix of their curious nature, their intelligence, and a whole lot of luck.
Luck? Oh, yeah, I guess.
The Blue Song are a comparatively young faction in Sauria, but their civilization is by far the most advanced. This is because as they started to leave the trees and their society started to form, they happened upon the ruins of an ancient forefather city under their home.
Oh,
Ruins
okay.
such as these are littered all across the land of Sauria, but this city, this library, buried under the Pluvian rainforest, was particularly vast. Though a pseudo-religion started to spread throughout the Avisaurians, worshipping the forefathers as ancient gods, these religious beliefs quickly dissipated the more they truly began to understand this long-lost civilization. The Blue Song still think very, very highly of the forefathers, but fully understand that these were just mortals. They were just people, Saurians. Saurians who failed. Saurians who died.
That's what we'll do better. I mean, they were really cool, but they still failed at the end of everything. You gotta give them kudos for that. I mean, for all the wrong that they're apparently doing. I mean, not just automatically creating a full religion based on these ancient ruins and just automatically worshipping them, but like actually like learning more about them and say, hey, okay, these people weren't gods, they were just people with more advanced technology, and like they did great things, but they were still people, things that we could do and we could do better, and where they failed we could succeed. That's a cool mindset to have in like a fantasy series like that. Very cool.
Through the study of everything the forefathers left behind, the Avisaurians were able to rapidly grow from a handful of tree-dwelling clans to a single, unified, powerful empire in just a few tens of generations.
Jeez, okay, wow.
Despite their secrecy, the Avisaurians were not totally unknown to the wider lands of Sauria before their invasion. For decades, the faction made frequent trips into mainland Sauria in the form of seemingly harmless scientific expeditions. To the wider people of Sauria with little to no knowledge of the Rainforest Saurians' grand city home, they seemed like nothing more than a harmless, curious faction of chroniclers or librarians. During
Okay.
these expeditions, though, the Blue Song were studying not only the land, but its people.
I mean, that you got to remember, you never trust librarians. You never know what they're actually doing.
Its wildlife, and all of the ancient ruins strewn across its surface.
Current goal.
In recent years, the land of Sauria has been thrown into turmoil as the Blue Song finally launched their total invasion of the mainland. One of the very first things the Blue Song did after their initial invasion was erecting a new base of operations, the Blue Song Embassy. They built it here, on the rim of the endless Solaris Sands, a vast desert in the middle of mainland Sauria, because of the lack of dangerous wildlife in the local area.
Really? Lack of?
The taming of the wilds has been the faction's main goal since the day they uncovered their first forefather, Ruin. The world of Sauria is dangerous, it's rugged, it's wild, and it's full of barbarians, pirates, witches, and all kinds of dangerous creatures. The Blue Song claim their goal is an altruistic one. They simply want to tame the land and make it safe for all Saurians, as the forefathers attempted before them. But, understandably, most of the tribes and clans of Sauria oppose the Blue Song's expanding imperialistic conquest.
Yeah, I mean, it's not hard to see why. We just want to make everything safer for everybody. But yeah, you want to make everything safer for everybody while you're in charge. I don't think so.
Most of these races, these factions, are free people. They are farmers and hunters and fighters. They are hardened by Sauria and will fight to keep their home wild and free.
Blue Song Chancellor. Okay, that's what he is.
The Blue Song Chancellor is the leader of the Blue Song, but she more accurately fits the description of a queen.
Again, her eyes.
The Chancellor is approximately 150 years old, far exceeding the usual maximum lifespan of 50 years for the Avisaurians.
50?
And
Is that
she
all?
She has reached almost mythical status because of this. She is considered among our people to be infinitely wise, undoubtable in her decisions, and the perfect leader. This reputation isn't without reason. She has personally led the Blue Song to tremendous success and prosperity during her long tenure.
Oh,
The Blue
okay.
Song have always been an imperialistic faction, but it is the current Chancellor who really set in motion the Blue Song's extensive study into the forefathers and their recent conquest to rapidly expand and tame the wilds of Sauria. There is more to this particular character that I'd like to cover, but that would lead into spoilers for potential future films in the series.
Of course.
So I'm gonna have to stop it there.
I mean, I'm okay with spoilers. I really am.
Captain Ornithocera is a high-ranking captain in the Blue Song military.
Yeah, him.
Ornithocera's first real mission was as a military escort during one of the many scientific expeditions into mainland Sauria pre-invasion. He was a captain then, but a ceremonial one, not a battle-hardened one. Most of the Blue Song military hadn't seen real battle at this point, living on their mostly isolated and safe rainforest home. The expedition went very badly.
I love that. It's like, well, one, I mean, the fact that you describe a rainforest as being safe, I mean, one, that tells you how good they actually, how bad the rest of Sauria actually is. but 2, I mean, it just immediately just went downhill from there.
During the treacherous cross of the inland sea, a pair of mosasaurs attacked and sunk one of the 2 Blue Song vessels. And the first thing to greet the survivors of the attack when they finally made landfall was a gathering of hungry baryonyx.
Oh my god, did they use like Viking-style longships? Oh, okay, I love that.
Attracted to the shoreline to scavenge on whatever washed up. It was in this very battle with these new and alien and terrifying creatures, these monsters, where Ornithocera gained his signature facial wounds. Scars are not attractive things in Blue Song society, and they have the means to at least cover up Ornithocera's injuries, but he, uncharacteristically for an Avisaurian, keeps them on full display. They're a reminder of the wild and dangerous place Sauria truly is, a reminder of the fight he still has to finish. Captain Ornithocera has also made a particular enemy of War Chieftain Taurox, as in a recent battle between the Blue Song Empire and the Kindred of the Tusk, Ornithocera managed to slay Taurox's brother, an infamous Carnotaurus known as the Bull.
He was the one that killed the bull, okay.
Captain Ornithocera, at the present moment, is under the spell of the Fell. But this is no regular Fell-seeing curse. The great Elder Ones have plans for him.
Oh,
but what
really?
they truly want, only time will tell. And that's it. That's pretty much all I have written down about the Blue Song that doesn't spoil potential future films, that is. If you'd like to read the full sketchbook I've been showing off in this video and scour my notes for yourself for anything I may have missed, the full sketchbook from start to finish is available right now on my Patreon page for just $5 dues.
Again, I'm happy that he's making more Dinosauria, because especially just like that one hint that we saw with like the baby T-Rexes, they were so cute. But at the same time, I'm so angry that Sauria is going on hold because of it. Damn you! Why does it have to be so hard to make? God, again, I hope that he gets more help to make these, because again, that whole thing of like 2.5 years to make these 3 shorts. Like, that is like a just astronomical workload for a single person. I mean, I hope that we get to see more Sauria in the future. But yeah, I'm gonna miss it. So yeah, that's gonna be it for now. So, of course, as always, I'll link all 3 videos in the description if you want to watch them, if you haven't seen them yet for some reason. Corner video will lead to my Let's Play of the day, and yeah, with all that out of the way, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.